Let's see. Let me get my screen here proper, guys. There we go. Hey there. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the All Portable Discussion Zone. We have a special session today, and the topic is going to be answering questions for those who are new to Summits on the Air. So we have a few guests here from Arizona because this whole thing kind of was driven by a bunch of new people in Arizona wanting to get on board with Summits on the Air. So we have several guests here in the panel today. We have Dan, KC7MSU, and we have Dave, AE9Q. We have Brian, W7JET, and Keith, KR7RK. And we have Pete Scola, W7A And so
Hello.
we also have a bunch of you guys in the chat room, which is great. And I actually might bring some of you in at some point if I know you to join the discussion. We'll see how it goes. But if at any rate, we have some great resources. I see several people in the chat room who are very knowledgeable about Summits on the Air as well. So those of you who are new and watching, make sure that you throw these questions out, and we'll make sure we address them the best we can. And so with that, let's just go around real quick, and let's hit each of you guys and just introduce yourselves and let us know a little bit about yourself. Just maybe take 30 seconds to a minute. Go ahead, Dan.
Hi, I'm Dan, KC7MSU. I've been in the SOTA program for about 5 years. Last year during 2020, kind of got serious about it and finally got my mountain goat after all that time. So here just to answer any questions that possibly can.
Cool. All right, Dave.
I'm Dave, AE9Q, and I started SOTA in mid-2014. I was living in Northeast Alabama and did probably half of my activating in Alabama, North Georgia, South Carolina, and Tennessee. So I can compare the activating experience there with the desert activating experience, but happy to be here this morning.
Cool. Brian.
Hey, my name is Brian, W7JT. I'm a goat as well. Been in the SOTA program since I believe 2014, 2015-ish. Started completely by accident by climbing up on Browns Peak with friends and brought my HT, and next thing I know, somebody's just congratulating me for being the first activator and the points, and I'm like, I don't even know what that is. And here we are.
Okay. And Keith?
I'm Keith, KR7RK. I started in SOTA about 2016, and a friend of mine, NU7Y, Quentin, took me up onto a summit, and we did a little hike and activating, and I was completely hooked at that point. So I just love everything about SOTA, the hiking, the radio, the great people in it.
Cool. And then I'm just laughing at K5YVY. He says, I'm smooth with the keyboard, can't even tell I'm typing. All right, Pete, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, hello there. I'm Pete, W7A and I'm the W7A Association Manager. Started doing SOTA in 2013. At the time, I worked with the old association manager, and he wanted to bail out, so I volunteered to take over the association. And I've been ham since '65, so I've been around a lot, done hiking forever, in VHF contests and everything else. So SOTA for me was normal.
Okay, good. Yeah, and then here I am, Charlie. I got started 6 years ago. I knew about Summits on the Air from somewhere, but didn't really know anything about it. Thought I'd want to get involved. Show up to a club meeting, and who's presenting but W7JET? Hey, if you want to get involved, he did the slide presentation, said come along with me, and he took me on my first activation. So blame him. Okay, so let's get going here. I see a number of people in the chat who are real knowledgeable as well. So let's just throw it out here right now. Anybody have a question? And if you do, then make sure you get that out in the chat. I just wanted to mention, just so you know, I think Dan has I don't know. What do you have, Dan? You're over 1,000. How many activations do you have? Like number of activations, not points.
I think about 110, somewhere right around there.
Yeah. Okay. And I have over 300. Do you know, Dave, how many you have?
No, I haven't really kept track of
Okay. Well, you've got to have well over 100. Brian.
I'm actually looking right now. It's well over 200.
Okay. And Keith.
I actually just looked this morning. 473.
Okay. And then Pete. You have any idea?
I'm, yeah, 510-ish, somewhere right in there.
Okay. Cool. So you can see, between the six of us, there's 1,000, 2,000 times that we've hiked up a hill and done this thing. So the experience is pretty good there. All right. Cool. Let's see. The first question I have for you guys that we want to throw out. We want to talk about hiking a little bit and preparing for that. So let's just start out with what you do to prepare for your Summits on the Air adventure as far as the hiking portion of it. What do you do to prepare for the hiking portion, Dan?
Well, I primarily take and spend some time once I've kind of decided what area I'd like to go into, and then look at what mountain it is. And then after that, I'll spend some time on the SOTA mapping page or on SOTA LS page, and sometimes Cal Topo as well, just to kind of see what the terrain's like and how to get there, etc. And I'll also look and see if someone else has been there on the SOTA page, as far as, did they leave any comments? Did they leave a track or anything like that?
Okay, cool. Just real quick, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Buiz asked if FT8 QSOs count as a SOTA activation. Anybody?
As long as they're done from a summit, sure.
Yeah. And W5IPA also answered that is correct. We have somebody watching from a snowstorm on top of a mountain right now as well. Wow. Cool. All right, go ahead. Go ahead, Dave.
Okay. Well, I check. It's basically same as Dan. I also have notes from other folks that have gone, and I look online and see what the comments. And two of the things I think I look at most, besides like, okay, how long is it going to take me to get there, and how many can I do in a day in that? But basically, how often has it been activated? Everybody likes their challenges. I like the ones that have been activated a lot, so that I know that they're doable for us old folks. And then the second thing I look at is there a track that Keith has uploaded to SOTA, the SOTA watch, because I use a GPS, and I find following, knowing that this way will get me up there, as opposed to having to make a bunch of different efforts to get up to the top. And there's a lot of other things too that you do, but that's the fundamentals.
Cool. All right, Brian.
So yeah, for me, I usually early on, it's not as prevalent now because a lot of the summits have been activated, but early on, as Pete testified to, most of the summits were first-time activations, so we were usually the first people going up there. And depending upon the summit, there may or may not be any information for it. There's a lot of resources out there. In Arizona, we've got a site called Hike Arizona, and there's usually a lot of really good information on there about summits that have already been hiked by the non-ham radio folks, and you can get a lot of information out of that page on how to access the summit, what problems there might be as far as parking rules, things like that. And usually there's even GPS tracks on there, so you can download the track and get an idea of how to get up. As far as if it's a summit that's got no information on it at all, and there's actually been several, a lot of times I'll look at it really hard on Google Earth to see if there's possibly going to be some obstructions or issues with getting up the way I think might be the way to go up. And sometimes even that doesn't work, and you get to 3/4 of the way up and you're like, oh, well, that was a really bad plan. Let me go down, go around. or you realize this isn't going to work today. I've already wasted 3 hours trying to get up this way, and I think it's just time to call it and come back down, like we were talking about yesterday with my attempted activation a couple months back of Kentuck. I just thought I went the wrong way. We figured out that actually would have worked, but I had already chewed up a lot of time at that point. So, yeah, and then for me closing out, actually early on, there's a lot of tracks on the SOTA maps page for my early activations because nobody had been up there for it. In fact, I know a few of you guys have probably used those tracks. I know Ray used my track from Haystack Butte, I think, to get up on Haystack, which is out in the Salt River Canyon Wilderness. So, yeah, mostly look at the tracks, figure out how to get up there. And then I've got my little safety plan that I like to do with my wife, so she knows where I'm going to be, when to start worrying about me. And I usually also include the telephone number and that information of whatever agency it is that covers that area. So if I'm out in a remote part of Gila County, she's got the number to the Gila County Sheriff's Office, so that way she can call them. Because if you call, most of the time, if you call 911 in the area you live in, it's going to take a while for them to figure out where that call needs to get routed to start getting help to you if you're overdue.
All right, cool. Let's take a break here real quick. We'll get to Keith and Pete on their thoughts, but there's a question from I don't know how to pronounce his name, Telesogt, Telesogt, I guess, or whatever. He says he's thinking about an HT and kind of to know which one. And so you guys, what would you recommend as the HT to take up on the mountain? We'll start with Pete.
Was that me?
Yep, Pete. Yeah. What HT would you recommend?
Okay, well, I'd take a one that does 2 meters and 432, and get one obviously that's waterproof, and then of course smaller the better. I kind of prefer the simpler HTs, they're not as complex, because it turns out trying to figure something out about a handy talkie up on a hill without the book is really tough. So you want to make sure you program it ahead of time. I've been using just an old single 2 meter VX 170 forever because it's totally bulletproof, waterproof. You can drop it and it doesn't care. Yeah. So yeah, you want a rugged one, and of course one you can put dry cells into in an emergency. You don't want to just have the battery, the LiPo battery. It's good to have a dry cell pack in case you need to use it when you get out there. Okay. So yeah, just a good all around waterproof. There's lots of features. It just depends on what you're comfortable with.
Keith, what do you think, Keith?
Oh, for bringing in HT?
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, I most activations don't even bring an HT because I tend to operate HF. But when I do, I normally am bringing in a Linko, which I have to agree with Pete on the simplicity factor. And my Linko, it's a DJ G7T, I think. It does 2 meters and 23 centimeters. And it is a rugged, radio. Unfortunately, very hard to actually program, I think, without, using some software or having the manual. So I tend to agree with Pete that a simple HT is your best option. But honestly, I don't normally bring an HT.
Okay. Brian?
So I've gone through different HTs over time, deciding what worked best for me. Original HT was an Alinco DJ57T, good radio, very basic. But at some point I decided mainly for being able to find me, again, going back to that whole conversation earlier, because Charlie and I are aware of, and I didn't know him personally, but we have a hiking person that we both know that was disappeared and has never been found. In the Mazadal Wilderness, which is not too far from where we live, and they never found him. So I carry a Kenwood D72A with me, and when I'm hiking alone, the APRS is always beaconing. I have it set to go off every 10 minutes, and it sends out a beacon. Sometimes the Digipeater picks it up, sometimes it doesn't. But if someone knows that I'm out, they can find. Especially if they're in that area, they're going to be able to pick up the packets and hopefully locate me if I'm unable to signal for myself. So not that I'm trying to scare everybody, but we do hike in some fairly remote locations here in Arizona. People do go missing here. People do get it. Things do happen. It's very rugged terrain, and even the most experienced hikers can get into trouble. And this particular gentleman is a very experienced hiker. So I carry the D72 for that. I also like it because if you use, you can actually spot yourself via APRS on that radio. So if there's a specific string of information you have to send in a certain exact order, and if you send it through, the digipeters pick it up and it gets blasted to a gateway, and then it ends up out on SOTA Watch. And if you actually watch SOTA Watch, you'll see, where it tells you it got spotted from the RBN gate. It'll, SMS, and will say APRS2 SOTA. And that's why I like carrying it, because it's actually worked pretty much everywhere I've ever used it. I used it in Hawaii to spot myself. I used it actually over in Europe to spot myself when I was in Scotland and England. So it's worked. It's several times. I've been able to get myself out with a spot using that radio. And it's a if you're familiar with every manufacturer has a certain that's what I'm looking for, certain logic to their programming. So I've been using Kenwood radio since I got my license in 1989, and Kenwood's been pretty good about keeping their keys and their logic the same. So if you knew how to program a Kenwood D70 or Kenwood TH75A back in 1989, that same logic follows all the way to today. Most of the menu items, the way they describe how to do stuff are the same. So I can very easily zip through that radio and program it. The Alinco radios that Keith are talking about, the DJ29, which is the 220 900, and the G7, which is that tri-band radio, are horrible. They're really a pain in the butt to program, and I only carry those radios for special occasions when we're doing something where I want those bands. But for the most part, I'm not a big fan of those. Either one of those models are very difficult to program.
Okay. All right, Dave.
Well, here's show and tell. If you can see them, there you go.
If you hold it in front of your face, probably.
Yeah, the Kenwood THF6A, which isn't made anymore, and the other one is the Yaesu FT1D, which also isn't made anymore. So, but I wanted to show both of them or talk about them because they kind of illustrate both points that have been made so far: simplicity, ease of operation. That would be the Kenwood. I can do anything on the Kenwood. It's strictly FM, not digital, but you can look at the radio and you can figure out how you want to do things. So if you're in a panic situation, or you're in the midst of a snowstorm or something, you can easily do it. The Yaesu is digital and FM, and I bought it because it does APRS. Like Brian mentioned, it does Yaesu digital. And so I thought it would be handy to be able to beacon. And also I had the instructions even printed out how to send a spot. But ultimately, I wasn't very successful with getting into the digipeters or getting into a digipeter that was actually hooked into the internet. So from my perspective, at least, and I was doing this more in the Southeast, the APRS wasn't really all that functional. And the Yaesu is a much more rugged radio. That's another issue than the Kenwood, but that rugged also equals heavy. So that's something else to balance. So I guess my overall recommendation would be to get one that's dual band and that's simple to operate. So when you're in a stressful situation, all of a sudden you don't have a situation where you can't figure out how to do what you want to do.
Okay, good. And then Dan.
I'm like Brian. I carry the Kenwood THD72 A. That's that radio there, primarily for its APRS features. I used to use the APRS a lot so that my wife can follow me along on top of mountains. I typically do that off of my Garmin now, so I have a little less use for the APRS. Also, I still every so often will carry my Yaesu FT60R. That's a really rugged radio. I've dropped it. It's gone down mountains a little ways and things like that as I've dropped it, and it's always come out in good shape. So those are my two kind of go-to radios.
Cool. And then I use an FT60R. Kind of meets the criteria that everybody was talking about. Okay, we're getting a few questions here, so we're going to be able to transition from kind of an agenda into more just answering questions. So we're going to finish up with Keith and Pete as far as hiking advice, and then we're just going to go round robin, or just as questions come in, I have a few listed here that we're going to ask, and we'll just answer them. So go ahead, Keith.
Okay. Well, so briefly, I think one of the most important things is to understand that probably if you do it, at least the way I think is right, you're going to spend more time planning your hiking than you will actually spend operating the radio for SOTA. It takes quite a lot of effort to really properly plan out your hike in order to be safe and do it safely. And that I think is paramount. I think it would be a shame if a SOTA activator got in trouble due to poor planning. And maybe that goes back to my Boy Scout training of being prepared. But I just, the last thing we want is the media, making some big article about somebody in distress who was hauling their ham radio to a summit. So I like the other guys, I spend a lot of time looking at various website and resources. One really important thing I think is to make sure you know who owns the land that you're planning to hike on. Mm-hmm. In the United States, there's so much private property, and there's tribal land, and there's different government units that own certain types of land, and they have different restrictions on what you're able to do when you're accessing them. So don't make the mistake of thinking that just because it looks like wilderness that you can freely go stomping along through the woods. And there's various resources at Lists of John. There's a website called Lists of John that is actually used, I believe, to identify many, many of the SOTA summits. And it has a great deal of information about different peaks. But if you drill down to a specific summit, you can pull up a map that shows land ownership. Another good way to find land ownership is CalTopo. And then one that I like to use is called Acre Value. That will actually identify if it's private property, who specifically owns that land. So I think that's important when you're planning out your route to know whose land you're walking on. And if there's permits required, for example, in Arizona, we have Arizona State Trust land. And, you can buy a $10 permit once a year that grants you access to most of the state trust land. So, plan, and then plan some more, and then figure that once you're out there, it's probably not going to go quite according to your plan anyway, but at least you've gotten a general understanding. I would also say learn how to read topo maps so you can understand where ridges are versus valleys. I personally find that hiking on ridges is usually much easier than hiking in valleys. Valleys tend to be where the water flows, and very dense vegetation might be there. Ridges tend to be easier to follow. That's my opinion. I also like to carry a GPS. The one I carry has InReach as well, and so it can beacon out my position every 10 minutes or so, and I think that's an important safety feature because most of the time I'm hiking alone. I would like to have somebody know where I am if I do get in trouble. And the last thing I'll mention is just acknowledge that most hiking, at least in Arizona, is probably going to be a little riskier than just going and walking on a nice smooth trail. Very often you're bushwhacking or cactus whacking or whatever you want to call it. If there is a trail, it may not be a nice smooth soft surface. And so, just acknowledge that it can be risky, and do everything you can to minimize those risks. In Arizona, one thing I do is wear snake gaiters, which protect the lower half of my leg with some hard shell protection, so that if a snake was to strike, or what really they've done is protect me from lots of spiny thorns and cactus. So things like that, to just acknowledge that it's not a walk in the park, and prepare yourself accordingly. So with that, I'll close it out.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Keith. Hey, we've got a couple of guests here with us as well that hopped on here from the chat. We have Adam, K6ARK. Hey, say hi and tell us a little bit about you.
Hey, Charlie. Thanks for inviting me over and having me join in on the Zoom as well. Good to see all you guys on the video here, and some good questions and good tips coming out.
Cool. And then we have Dan, AI6XG. I always mess up his call sign except for when I say it. Go ahead, Dan.
Hi, everybody. Dan, AI6XG from Northern California. Glad to join everybody from Arizona and Southern California. So just been doing SOTA for a few years, but really enjoy it, and glad to participate in the discussion here.
Cool. All right, let's go over to Pete then. Pete, why don't you wrap up hiking? And one of the questions was North American associations. Let's see, what was it? For those peaks in Native American lands, are permits obtainable, or is it mainly discouraged from working peaks on their land? What is your experience in the reservations being supportive? So go ahead and tell us a little bit about hiking and preparing for that, and then answer that question. How about that, Pete?
Okay, I can give that a shot. Okay, yeah, as far as planning, I use Google Earth. I've always just used Google Earth. I like to actually look at the terrain. I mean, I've been here my whole life, so I know a lot of the areas kind of already. I know how kind of like, well, that area is rough and that area is not so rough. So I look at Google pretty much exclusively, because I have an overlay. You can go to the SOTA mapping page, and you can download an overlay for Google Earth. It drops all the peaks on there and breaks down the peaks by points and colors them differently and all that. It doesn't show like SOTA Atlas does, SOTA Last does, where it shows how many times it's been activated unless you dig in a ways. But Google's real nice, because you can lay down a track, you can look at the what the route's going to look like, for elevation gain and steepness and all that sort of thing. You can rotate stuff around. It makes some peaks look really easy that aren't. It makes some look really that are easy really hard. So you got to be careful about it. But it works pretty well. That's all I've ever really used. That and of course, most of the time there are no trails. So most of the peaks in Arizona really don't have trails. So basically, you kind of get close. You go, well, where can I get my Jeep? How close can I get my Jeep on this peak? And then after that, it's just, you go up, you bushwhack your way to the top. And my experience there is that I've had a few I haven't completed, because I got to a certain point and I said, well, looking at my clock, it took me 3 hours to get here. I only have 3 hours of light left. I got 3 miles to walk on that ridge, so I'm going to bail out. So one thing when you're hiking, don't be afraid to say, well, okay, this isn't going to happen. You don't want to get airlifted out or sit there overnight and all that baloney. So every now and then, something doesn't work out, planning, doesn't work. And you just say, enough of that, and move back. So, but there's lots of ways to, and as far as, and then so basically that's it. The number one thing I do is I carry a cell phone with me everywhere. I've gone to Verizon. I had other services, and I hate to promote anybody, but since I've had Verizon, I don't know of a peak I couldn't get service on, which is really nice. So that's my emergency thing, in addition to the ham radio, of course, for that. And of course, you can look at maps and things on there too if you want to. But you need to have all that with you, pre-plan. And the other thing I always do is I over carry how much water I need, always, even in the winter. I mean, I always take seems like most of my bag is water weight. And I hike with my dog a lot. He likes water too. There's that problem. But so that's pretty much it for there. Just I just kind of look for the best route. Going up the ridges almost always works. Keith's right there. I've learned that. But there are no easy peaks in Arizona other than the ones that are in the city, to be real honest, because there are no trails on most of this stuff. There are only a very few peaks in the state that really have what you call trails. And everything else is, you're going to have to get out there and go for it and bushwhack. So, but yeah, just plan it out as best you can, and try to get as close as you can to the mountain and go up the ridges. take your time. Don't be afraid to go back if it doesn't work out, and let everybody know where you're going, of course. I do the same thing. I leave where's Pete today? My wife knows it. On the desktop, says, where's Pete? And I have a big map showing where I'm at, and, roughly, I'll be on this hill, that hill, or this. And I do typically plan more than one peak, especially if it's a long drive, just because it's a long drive. And I try to kind of like go, well, if I'm going to use a whole tank of gas up, maybe I should do a couple rather than just do one. But like last week with all the snow, one was the only option. So, that goes.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much what I do for planning. And that was the second. There was a follow up to that.
Patrick asks, for those peaks in Native American land, are permits obtainable, or is it mainly discouraged from working peaks on their land? What is our experience in the reservations being supportive of activating?
Okay, yeah, I have contacted a number of tribes, Navajos and the Hopis and the White Mountain Apaches, and actually it seems to be very difficult to get any information out of them. They all require permits, but there are people that have hiked them, without getting permits. And so that's when it was flagged. The SOTA management team in England right now is working on a plan to put all of the USA reservation peaks into a special category and label them that way. So as it stands right now, there's only one peak I know of in Arizona you can hike with a permit. And my understanding on that is it may have also been, that may no longer be true. Up in the White Mountains, there was a peak behind the Honda casino that you could hike with a permit. You could get right there. But I heard now that somebody went up and they said, even now you can't do that. So bottom line is that you can't really go on Indian reservation peaks without having a permit, or if a ham radio operator happens to be a tribal member and you're good buddies, you can go escorted with somebody like that. So it's not that these peaks can't be done, but it's going to be difficult. It's going to require either a permit or a reservation member to take you there. And like I know that Ray, W7 USA, has a friend on the Navajo, and he's been trying to get organized with him to do a bunch of peaks up on that reservation. So anyway, I would say off all the reservations. Was it 2 years ago during one of the contests, a guy had permission to operate. He was doing a roving operation in the contest down by Maricopa, and he had gotten verbal permission to operate on Indian land. When he was operating, he was detained for over 2 hours by the police, the Indian police down there, and it cost him they didn't fine him, but they warned him and said, well, you have to have a permit. Verbal doesn't cut it. So, and then also the one other thing I saw is one fellow one time got a permit for fishing on one of the reservations and decided that allowed him to hike up on the mountains. Well, it isn't true. It has to state what you're doing. A lot of tribal land is like really private, even for the Indians. There are areas on the reservation you flat cannot go anytime. And there are areas they will let people go to get to the lakes and go fishing and stuff like that. So you do need a permit, guys. At this point, I avoid the reservations. When I tried to contact them, the tribe is they're hard to get a hold of. It seems like nobody's really in charge, or maybe nobody's just ever there. It's just hard to get somebody to talk to, actually.
Yeah.
So
okay, Pete.
It's just one of those things.
Thank you. Okay, so what we're going to do now, since we went through that one round robin, we're going to actually now change the format a little bit, where if you have a comment, just hop in and say it. Don't wait your turn. Just hop in, give your advice, and we'll, just like we do in the radio. If we've got a double, then we kind of figure it out. Okay. So let's see. So this question here was, who carries a first aid kit? None of you?
Everybody.
Yeah, I carry a pretty extensive one.
Yep.
A smaller version.
Any elaboration on that at all?
So for me, and I've had recent experience with this. For some of you that do know and don't know, I broke this arm pretty badly a couple months back, not doing a SOTA activation, but just doing a regular exercise hike by my house. And my big thing on any of this hiking is the term self-rescue. I want to make sure that I put myself in the best position possible to get myself out. I don't want to have to use the push both buttons down on my PLB to call for help, because I'm in a position where I am not able to get myself back out. So I worry more about breaking a leg than I do about breaking an arm, because as long as my legs work, I can probably get myself out. But if my legs don't work, that's going to be a big problem, especially if I'm really far back in a remote area where I had to do a lot of scrambling. Doing that with a splint on your leg is going to be very difficult. But I carry a one of the bigger pieces that most people may or may not know about. It's called the SAM splint, and it's basically just a rolled up. It looks like a roll. I actually maybe I'll get the first aid kit out in a minute to show what it looks like. But it's a roll up little orange thing that I can stretch out and form into a splint. And
Dan has
it's
one, he
back
says.
from my EMS days. For those who don't know, I was in the emergency medical service in Newark, New Jersey for about 10 years. So I've got a fair amount of experience when it comes to this stuff. And what's nice about it is you can form it. It's small. It doesn't weigh a whole lot, but it's very useful. So when I actually fell and broke my arm, I broke it just below the elbow right here. I had to have surgery to repair it. I splinted it and managed to hike back out 2.5 miles in the dark. It sucked splinting it. It hurt a hell of a lot. I actually almost blacked out twice doing it from the pain because it was that bad. But was able to splint it, get myself back out, and that was one of the primary things I had in the bag because, hey, like I said, I got to be able to walk. I got to be able to get myself out. And if I had not had that splint, there's no way I would have been able to walk because the pain was unbearable.
Okay.
I carry a few other things, mostly stuff to stop the big bleeding. Things that are going to be immediately life-threatening are what's in my first aid kit. It's tailor designed for the big emergency, not the cut finger, not the smaller stuff. There's a few things like that in there, but I'm more worried about the things that if I don't take some kind of intervention immediately, there is a good chance that I am going to be a lot worse off if I don't treat myself. And that's what I'm looking for. And that's how my kit is designed. So I have scissors in there to be able to cut clothing off. I have a SAM splint. I have duct tape. Duct tape is fantastic for splinting. It's nice and stiff. It usually will stick in any kind of weather condition, dirt on it, doesn't matter. So I can completely encapsulate my arm with duct tape. And that's exactly what I did. With the splinting on that particular situation. What's good too is your hiking poles. You can pull those apart, and if you need a leg splint, you can use your hiking pole for a leg splint. There's usually 3 sections. You got the section without the handle. If you have 2, it helps because at least you got one to walk with. But at least having one hiking pole is also a crutch, so you got something to get out with. And here in Arizona, some of the places we hike, somebody will say, "Well, I'll just use some wood from a tree." In certain places you can do that, but in the desert here, we don't always have long, straight branches that you can sit there and get creative with to make a splint out of. Or, you can use Nakatillo if you want to torture yourself the entire time because it's got spikes in it. Nice and straight, but it'll work. So I think the main thing, I guess what I'm trying to get across is have the basics in there and have a plan, an idea of what you can use around you to help get yourself out. The main thing is just making sure, like I talked about earlier, you have a way to signal for help, have a plan, have an order of how you're going to try to get yourself the help, and then how to get yourself out. The main thing is getting yourself out, because the SAR people, when they come in, they're putting themselves at risk to come get you. These SAR guys do have accidents. People die every year trying to get to someone who's hurt. So you got to keep that in mind. Because in the past, and this is something that is irritated me with hiking friends, non-ham radio hiking friends that are like, well, I'm older, I've got no family, I've got no anything, I don't care. And I said, well, you don't understand. The people that are there and that are coming to rescue you, they do. And they don't care that you're a single person, that you don't give a crap about your life, and you're putting them at risk by making it difficult for them to come find you. So think about that when you're doing your stuff. You're not just putting yourself at risk, you're putting somebody else at risk too. That's my soapbox on that.
All right, and so we'll move on to equipment here in just a sec. But anybody else have anything to add on that, Dan or Adam or anybody else? Good.
I know I did not for a long time carry any first aid kit, and it proved to be pretty stupid. And I found out my number one first aid piece of equipment was actually my hiking pole. So I used to not hike with them very often. And it turns out this last year with doing a lot more peaks during the year, I'm quite injury prone. So I tend to slide down the mountain quite often, things like that for some reason. So I've got numerous cuts up and down my legs and other extremities. And I totally went through my first pack of first aid stuff, just bandaging myself up so I'm not constantly bleeding as I'm going down the mountain here. So as someone who didn't do it, it's well worth just, making sure, like Brian said, make sure you have something so that you can get yourself down off the mountain and make yourself comfortable as much as possible. And it certainly makes my wife feel a lot better about me being out primarily on my own. So, but carry both. Take your hiking poles and take a kit with you.
Yeah, I would add that one of the most important pieces of your first aid kit is what you carry up here. It's your knowledge of how to assess and treat, basic injuries and illnesses that you may encounter when you're out there. So consider finding and taking a wilderness medical course, wilderness first aid, wilderness advanced first aid, wilderness first responder. Take your pick. They're all excellent and kind of increasing in scope and duration, but that knowledge is really useful and really important to have.
Okay. Anything else, guys?
I would just add, it's maybe not officially part of the first aid kit, but if you're desert hiking, I have fallen into cactus, and I have had my gator when I was up on a steep climb bushwhacking. One of my gators got caught in a hook cactus spine, and I had gloves on. So when I reached down to free it, my glove got caught. I was like, I'm stuck and I'm at an angle, so I'm off balance. And fortunately, in my belt pouch, I was able to reach I carry a very small multi-tool with pliers in it. And so I was able to actually bust off the spines that were holding me and get free. And then when I've fallen into cactus, that same little multi-tool has either using the pliers or in some cases the tweezers pulling the spines out of my arm. So that's the opposite of what Brian has been talking about, the major issues, but the minor ones can certainly make the difference between an enjoyable hike and a comb.
See this here? This is exactly what I carry with me for that exact reason, is getting
I do as well.
cactus spines out. Just a simple plastic hair comb or a pick is the best tool to get the spines out. I also have a needle nose pliers with me for the ones that are really stuck in there, because I walked through a creosote bush, or I brushed through one, and there was a cholla cactus inside the creosote bush, and I had cholla from about the ankle up to about the middle of my thigh on a summit not too far from the house. So yeah, I didn't have the comb for that one. I only had the needle nose plier, and that sucked.
All right, guys, let's move on to gear. And then after we talk about gear for a little bit, then we're probably going to end up going about till 10:30. So let's talk about gear for a little bit. Then after that, we will follow up with kind of the ins and outs, the rules and stuff like that of SOTA. But let's see what you guys use as far as your radios. We know some of you switch it up quite a bit, and some of you use the same old thing all the time. So just throw in there and tell us what you got.
Well, I carry three primary options for HF. When I want to go ultralight, mountaintop or MTR 3B, 17, 20, and 40 meters on that. When I'm willing to carry a little more weight, want a lot of versatility, especially for summit to summit chasing, the KX2 and a random wire. And when I want to run power, the Yaesu FT857 and a linked dipole are my picks. So those are my three top used radios for SOTA stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty close to what Adam does. I have a MTR 3B, which is a great radio especially for longer hikes. And I have a trapped 20, 30, 40 end-fed halfway for that. And then shorter hikes, or if I'm on a mountaintop that's got a lot of towers and RF, then I take my KX2 with either the trapped or the random wire end fed. I also have a speaker wire dipole that I built, which is good, but it's a little heavier. I prefer the end fed half wave than the end fed random wire for that.
All right, I guess anybody speaking?
Yeah.
Go ahead, you got it.
I was just going to say, I use the same idea. We seem to all have the concept of the heavier radio and the lighter radio. I carry, I carry my KX2 and the battery, the headset, and that in this metal box, which is probably about, with stuff in it, probably about 3.5 pounds. And then when I want to go light and do CW only, then I have this little kit with, which again is a complete setup, and it only weighs a little over a pound. And I just got a recent radio, this SW3B. It's a Chinese radio, similar to the MTR, but it has dials and knobs, which I like a lot better. And I used to have an MTR3B, the old one, which had just one digit display. And so it was heck to figure out what frequency I was on. I am a longtime single sideband SOTA operator, and that's what I did exclusively for about half the time. And then finally realized, mainly from the chasing standpoint, I realized how many points and how many folks I was not able to contact because I was only doing voice. And so I brushed up my code to where now I'm very mediocre at it. But for function for SOTA, which is a pretty straightforward communication, I do CW also, and so there's lots of advantages to CW over single sideband. But given my druthers, I think because of the fact that I still have to really work at code, I enjoy the KX2 because I can do both, and I can have my single sideband conversations. So again, the kind of the theme here is, first off, what can you afford? And then secondly, how much weight do you want to carry? And then thirdly, can you do CW? Because if you can, it opens up the world to much lighter and smaller radios. That's it.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to add?
Yeah, I carry I probably carry the heaviest backpack around, as Brian and Charlie know. I pack just about the kitchen sink. So I typically use my KX3. I kind of like that radio a little better over the KX2 because there's less menu fussing around for me. I'm primarily a single sideband operator, and it works great. No problem even getting out to the East Coast and things like that. So really enjoy that radio. I also use a linked dipole. I really like those. They're simple for me to use, and they go up pretty quickly. I've been using the same one that I've got now for like the last 3 years with no issues. I use a roll-up J-pole with my HT. You can get those off from eBay or something. They work very well. Hoping to learn CW here in a usable form so I can maybe try one of the smaller radios. Outside of that, I also pack a BioNO battery. They're easy to use, and they work really well. And I'm still an analog log taker, so I've got just a clipboard with some simple logs on it. I find that it's far easier for me to paper log than it is for me to try and work my fingers on my iPhone trying to log. That's primarily what I use on my activations.
Yeah, I agree with Dan. I still use the paper method for logging. I usually have my phone on SOTA Spotter just so I can catch any summit to summits. And it's just easier for me. But I did find that when you're higher than 10,000 feet, your pen doesn't always work. So I always make sure I have some pencils with me. So you're not having to use your blood or something to write down the logs. I think the other thing is the mass. Talk about mass. I use just a cheap carbon fiber, really light telescoping fishing pole, and it bends a lot, but it's never broken on me. But I don't use the very, very top. I've actually take the antenna off probably about the third segment down, so it's a little stronger. But it bends a lot, but it's really lightweight. It's short. It folds down to 2 feet and just sticks to my pack. And when I'm going up to the summit, people are asking me, "Are you going fishing up on the summit? I didn't know there was a river up there." So I just tell them I'm fishing for signals. So.
Charlie, I'll add a couple of comments. Like some of the others, I use a KX2, but I also carry the amplifier for the KX2, which adds quite a lot of weight. But I enjoy making many contacts, and I've kind of chosen to challenge myself. Instead of challenging with QRP power, I like to challenge myself with trying to get 10 meter and 12 meter and 15 meter contacts, and using some of the upper bands. But it does make for a heavy pack. But one of the things I want to add is whatever you use, like you've seen some of the people have little boxes, and I recommend having at least one station set up pretty much ready to go at any moment. In fact, when I finish an activation and I get home, the very first thing I do is recharge the batteries and get everything packed right up in my backpack and ready for the next activation. A lot of my activations, even though I do a lot of planning for a specific summit, oftentimes I don't choose to go activate until that day. I may not really know my time availability, and the last thing I want to do is rush to get ready and end up on a summit without all my gear because I forgot to put something in the bag, or decide that I do have the time this afternoon, but I can't go because I haven't gotten it all ready. So I highly recommend having things ready to go. As soon as you're done with one, get it ready for the next one, which also probably means it's not your same station. And we're focusing more on the activator gear, but I also highly recommend for beginners to get involved with chasing. And for me personally, I do a tremendous amount of chasing from my vehicle. So I have a mobile station, and obviously that mobile station is not the same radio that I take with me to the summits. But I think you can learn so much by chasing, and just any standard ham radio, VHF or HF or whatever it is, and it can be mobile or a nice base station, or a super station with towers. But I highly recommend getting involved with chasing.
This is my HF pack right here. This is one of those first aid kit bags you can buy off of eBay. Everything fits in it. In the bag, we've got the antenna, the radio, the battery, the CW key, and the earbuds. It's a UKITS HB1B. This has become my primary radio that I use for HF for SOTA. It's four bands, 20, 30, 40, and 80. I've never done 80 meters with it, only 20, 30, and 40. Most of the time, just 20 and 40. Link dipole, been using it forever. It's fed with RG173, and it just goes. The CW key is a Palm Radio Pico paddle. Really like it. It's actually my favorite key to use. And it works well. The reason why it's small and I keep it in this pack like this is, it's always there. I know everything's together. I don't have to worry about, oh, crap, I forgot the antenna or the battery or whatever, which I've done in the past. But this same thing comes out of my backpack and goes into my suitcase for work, because when I am at work, I usually am out on the road for about a week. I'm all over the country, and sometimes I have enough downtime in different places to actually try and get an activation. And I think I've probably done about a dozen activations out on the road all over the country. And that's because I've had this little pack with me with all the stuff in it. I can just throw it in a bag and go. And a pole, as I said earlier, we were talking about it. This is just a inexpensive fishing pole from eBay. It stretches out to about 16 feet. I reinforce it with some heat shrink so it's a little more durable around the base. So you can, when you shove it in a pile of rocks, it doesn't get chewed up as much. And that's the second one I've had. I recently broke the first one, which was probably had about 180 summits on it before it finally gave up. So we're on to number 2 now.
All right, before we move on away from gear, anybody else have anything to add?
I would like to just mention I use an FT817, and I do that mainly because of VHF, because I really like 6 meters, and I've got some really neat 6 meter openings. So then I have a link dipole. So I have, 6 meters on my antenna with me at all times also. So I've had some openings when I worked 50 stations on 6 meters. So from a SOTA summit. So that's kind of fun. So that's one for the FT817. I also have an MTR3, of course, and all of that. So I can get one. I have one station down around 1.2 pounds, everything. And it also has a small link dipole. That's the MTR3. But I use the Yaesu all the time. And again, it just does everything. So it's real. And I've stepped on it, dropped it, whatever, rained on it. It don't care. So it's good though.
Yeah. All right. Let's. Okay, go ahead, Dan.
So Charlie, I saw one comment in the chat, and I think you saw it as well. 2 items that we haven't really spoke about is backpacks and hiking boots.
Yeah, I was gonna make sure we need to leave enough time, but if you want to do that, let's just do that real quick. Let's don't go into detail about it. Let's just go around real quick. Everybody tell what your shoes are that you wear for regular hiking, not winter hiking, just regular trail hiking, and then tell what backpack you use. You can elaborate maybe a little bit, but let's just try to get through this real quick because we only have now just a half hour to cover the actual rules and all that stuff, and I'm sure people really don't know a lot. There's people watching who don't know how SOTA works. We need to cover that. So, but yeah, I was planning on getting to that. So right now, let's go ahead with you, Dan. Go ahead and just tell us what you use.
So, my biggest comment, I mean, I've tried several hiking boots, and I've got the problem of dripping wet. I'm lucky if I get at a size 7. So hiking boots are a big problem for me, finding one of the right size. Same thing for backpacks. All I can say is go try them on, and don't be afraid to go through 1 or 2 backpacks or 1 or 2 different types of hiking boots, and do not buy them at Kmart or something like that. Go someplace where you have a large variety where you can try things on, along with great wool hiking socks. I really like those. And the biggest thing is make sure that you are comfortable, because you're going to be hiking a long ways at times. And like I said, don't be afraid to try 1 or 2 and spend the money. It's well worth it. That's my take on it.
Okay, and so for me, I use the oboes. I don't even remember what they're called, kind of oboes they are, but there's several different types of oboes that are pretty good. I know TAB, Chris does the same. And then as far as packs, I have 2. I use an 18-liter one. That's a Camelback, and then I have a Kelty Red Wing 44, depending on how much gear I need to take. Any of you other guys?
For the hiking shoe, I use different ones, but Keen I like because I have the toe box is larger on Keens. So if you have a little bit of a wider foot, that's something to check out. And then I make sure that I have it go up to the ankle, that I don't have just the hiking shoe. And I'm amazed when I see other hikers and they have trail runners or something. But with all the rocks we have and the fact you're carrying a pack, I just think it's a better idea to have a boot, not just a shoe.
Yeah, I use.
Go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, I use Red Wings. I have a set of Red Wings, $300 Red Wings that go way above your ankles, right? Almost like combat boots for those, like the peaks in the picture behind you there. So if it's lots of rock, it's got this waffle stomper kind of display or a pattern on the bottom. They're heavier, but they are totally bulletproof. There isn't a rock in the world to get through them, and it totally protects your ankles big time. And then for all the easy hikes, I just have some other much lighter boots, right? For things where there's a trail, or I know it's not really too awful bad. But for anything that's really technical, I get the big, heavy, solid leather, really aggressive thread, and mine are Red Wings. And
in some places you really need that, don't you?
I even had them resold once, so I've worn them out a couple of times.
Charlie, I'll just add. The ankle protection is important, and leather to protect. And I also think having a Vibram sole can be very helpful. I know I've been on a few exposed hikes, meaning that if a slip is likely to be very, very harmful or fatal, and if it wasn't for the the grip of the Vibram sole, I doubt I would have made it through without slipping and falling. So I think a good Vibram sole, and realize you go through them. You're going to have to replace them, and they cost a lot of money. But if it's going to keep you safe, then it's worth doing. And for a pack, I use a Osprey. I think it's a 36. But the one I use has a suspension thing on the back that allows a little bit of airflow. I sweat very heavily, and especially in Arizona, and sometimes I hike when it's 110 degrees, and you really need that airflow behind the back. So some of the Osprey packs have a little kind of a suspension thing that helps a lot with that.
I have a wide foot, so it's really hard for me to find trail runners or boots, but usually I take boots with me, but my favorite is the Speed Cross 5 from Salomon. It's got great traction, really lightweight. I wear those if I can, and if I absolutely have to, then I go to boots. But I really like the trail runners. They work on rock, regular trails, almost anything, bushwhacking, they still do. But I always wear gaiters on my shoes just to keep the stuff out of my feet. And that's one of the best things I ever did was put gaiters on, because otherwise I was always emptying my shoes out, especially up here in Northern California.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I use trail runners for everything from short hikes to backpacking with, a multi-day pack. I switch to boots when I need crampons, but trail runners and approach shoes are by far, to me, much better for handling, difficult terrain, rocks, scrambling, you name it. I'm much more secure and safer with those than wearing larger boots, just because I can position my feet better, place them precisely onto footholds, and I can feel stuff through them, which is important. That's pack-wise. Packs, I use anything from a running vest that carries maybe 5 liters or so total capacity, to up to a 40-liter pack for multi-day trips. So my typical packs for SOTA stuff for just day hikes is just like a 20-liter pack. The one I'm using most right now is an older Mammoth brand pack.
Okay, good. Anybody else add before we move on to the rules and all that?
I use Merrell's. I wear Chameleon Ventilator Lows, which are basically just a trail shoe with a Vibram sole on it. I really believe in the Vibram soles as well. I think they're excellent, provide a lot of protection on the bottoms of the feet. And then I have a mid that I'll wear depending upon the terrain. I prefer the lower shoe. Pack-wise, it's just a Kelty Red Wing. I think it's the 50-liter, slightly larger, so I can carry a little bit more stuff when I need to. Otherwise, I just compress it down. And for what's interesting about the shoes, and just a side note, the military did a really interesting study. You can find it on the internet on the weight of your footwear and how much it degrades your performance and endurance. And as much as 8 ounces has a significant impact on how far you can go. So I have a tendency to try to keep the shoe light but durable for that reason, because I have noticed that with heavier shoes, I start fatiguing out a lot faster.
Okay. Well, let's move on then. We're gonna it's almost gonna be like a role play until we maybe get some questions in here. But what I'm gonna do is play the guy that doesn't know anything about SOTA. So if I were to approach you and I were to say, "Hey, I can hike and stuff like that," and I know what radio gear I want, because obviously we've already went over those 2 items already. So where do I start? What do I do? What would you tell somebody who's just now getting started?
Pick an easy peak.
Say that again.
Do one that's pick an easy peak. Pick, you want to try it all out, right? So go to something that's easy to get to, and you can set up your whole station and make sure you got all the stuff with you. And first one should be just something simple.
Go out with somebody.
And maybe go with somebody. That's a good idea.
Okay, hold on, guys. I got some internet issues. Hold on, just a second. Keep talking amongst yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, I think yeah, go with somebody else. Watch videos and set up. Make your setup in your backyard and make some contacts. Make sure it works.
I think a lot of newbies, for some reason, think that people won't take them. I don't know why, but I enjoy going with somebody, especially somebody who's new, as they, start investigating and learning about this. It's always a lot of fun to watch them kind of light up when that first contact comes in. So I think, if you're new to this, no matter if you're in California or Arizona or wherever, look at, who's already been out there and see if they'll take you along. Even if you don't own any radio equipment, go with somebody and learn about what they do and why they like a certain piece of equipment before you go and spend your hard-earned dollars on it.
Yeah, I would also add for a newbie, don't feel like you got to do the most extreme. We live in a society of extremism. You have to do something really, really incredible to impress everybody and get attention. And in reality, if you can go to a super simple summit, you're going to get a huge endorphin rush out of the activation anyway. You don't need to go and try to climb Mount Everest to prove something on your first activation. And I think there's so many aspects to SOTA that you don't need to be the best at everything right off the bat.
So how do okay, so Dan Miller says, who selects the summits? The closest one to my HQTH is privately owned. So how close do you have to get to the summit? So there's two questions, but before we answer those, Dan, let me just ask this of you guys who were just talking. How do I know if it's easy or not? And how do I know which one to choose? Is there something out there that can help me select my first summit?
If you look at how many times a peak has been activated, if it's been activated a boatload of times,
where do I go for that? How do I know if it's been activated or not?
You can go to the Summits on the Air pages and look for mountains in a specific region, and then you can sort them by, for example, the total number of activations.
So is that what you guys do? Is you go, if you want to go on a Summits on the Air activation, immediately you go to that page, or where do you go to very first out, kind of to choose which peak you do?
Well, if you're a newbie, you probably just ask somebody.
Okay.
If you're assuming you actually know some people that are in SOTA, say, hey, what's an easy one? That's the best way for them to do it. But yes, the SOTA last page, right?
There we go. That's what I was fishing for.
Right, and then of course the Summits on the Air page also. But you have to dig a little more in the Summits on the Air page. But yeah, just pick one that's got 50 activations. Chances are you can drive to that one.
Dan, can you share?
Yeah.
So while he's bringing up a screen, who selects the summits? Anybody know?
I think Pete does.
So who selects them?
Yeah.
Well, the peaks are okay. It's semi-technical. The peaks are taken from what they call the list of Johns, and that is the database for Summits on the Air, and it's based on prominence. A peak has to have 482 feet of prominence. It used to be 500, but we just went through a revision to change that. So any peak that has 482 feet of prominence will end up being a SOTA summit. And then, of course, the points are determined by basically the elevation of the peak. So like one's up on the Mogollon Rim or 10-pointers, one's down the desert or 1-pointer. So there's elevation bands. So the list of summits is the gospel for everything, including summit names. So and whether and that's why they update this list of Johns every now and then due to government remeasuring or whoever, something changes in the database. Location. So on this last update, for instance, we had new summits, a lot of new summits, 150 some new summits put in. We also lost a number of summits, and we had some summits moved from one spot to another. So that database is constantly shifting, and every now and then when there's an update, things will change. But that's where it comes from. That's the Bible.
How close to the top do you have to be?
Summits. Well, you have to be within 25 meters. Well, it's 82 feet, right? 25 meters of the top. So however you want to measure it, and of course that is tricky. There are times on a peak, especially if it's like a pinnacle peak or something crazy like that, where it's a rock spire. It's like, well, maybe I can get to the base of it, and that's difficult to ascertain some of the times because GPSs have error, and you're probably almost better off with a contour map for some of them. But bottom line is, for almost all the peaks, if you just go to the highest spot, and it becomes pretty obvious where the highest spot is, you're good to go. However, having said that, a lot of times the highest spot is a big rock anyway. You want to be off the side. So you got to kind of figure that. And don't forget, only you have to be in the zone. Your antenna can be outside the zone. So you can actually get right on the edge of it if you can determine where that is. And you can actually then plot yourself down there and run the antennas outside if you want. Like you have a link dipole, you can put the half of it out there or something.
Okay. All right. Hey, Dan, let's say I lived in Eager, Arizona. How would I know which peak is closest to me and which one might be the easiest if I lived in Eager, Arizona?
Well, that's a good question because I usually just go by the area that I want to work. In this case, I was using Coconino South. So I've not tried to search by city in like SOTA, alas, or something.
Well, couldn't you just zoom in?
I can give an answer to that, Charlie.
Yeah.
If you go to the main SOTA website, not the SOT less, but what is it? SOTA.org.uk. And then if you go to their mapping site,
can you do that, Dan?
They have a range tool. So, for example, if you go to maps in that resources that you were just at.
Yeah, I think I've got a
right
maps. There you go.
There you go. So if you click on mapping on the top black the black bar there and go to range mapping page, and now you'll get a way to do this. So then you click on define range. Near the upper left, there's a button that says define range. And you can choose it based on like a city. You can choose it based on maybe if you're going to drive, like for example, I've used it driving from Tucson to Houston, and you can, so the range type has several options, including a road route, or in this case, we'd say a closed circle. And the reference point, you would just type in Eager, Arizona as the address there.
Eager, Arizona.
And you do have to, well, I would just put Eager AZ, but, and United States. And then you can also say how big of a radius do you want to go. So if I'm only willing to drive 1 hour, for example, you might say, well, I want a 50-mile radius. And then you click on map. It shows you a nice map of all the summits that are within 50-mile radius from Eager, Arizona. Then if you just close this define range box, and over on the left, you see where it says activations count up near the top. It's a button choice. So click that. Then you click on the heading for activations. It sorts either way. So you can see the most activated summit closest to Eager, Arizona would be Porter.
So click on that, right?
And the star of my favorite ones.
The star that's there will tell you that there's a GPS track available for that hike. So there's all kinds of information you can get.
And you can do the tracks page from there.
Right, but let's zoom in and take a closer look at the terrain. So let's just click on it, right? You just click on, or you could zoom in either way, right? And it's fine. And so now you see that may be the peak you want to do. That's the one. That's not the one. That's the one right there, right? So what can you tell from this map then? So say I wanted to do Porter then. Okay, I want to do Porter. You guys convinced me that that's the one. It's close to where I live, and it looks like there's so many of these activations that have already been done. So then what? What do I do next?
Pack the car.
Yeah, for this one, it's a car packing in the short hike.
How do I know that?
Well, so I would, if you click on that red triangle, and it shows a little box now, the top line that says Porter Mountain on it is actually a link to an information page. So if you click on that in a new window, now it opens up to tell you whether anybody has written some access notes, for example.
Oh, so right there it says it's a drive up.
Yep.
All right, good. Okay, so yeah, go ahead, Keith.
So I had mentioned earlier, if there was a star next to it, there's a GPS track, and unfortunately you can't access the track from this page, but what you would do is go under the mapping site, the mapping menu again, where we, up on the black bar at the very top.
Well, I think also if you right click on it, you can do a tracks page, which I find kind of handy.
Okay. And then to find that, yeah, so there you go.
Then just highlight it and say that I want to display it. And there's my track.
And the tracks are useful because it'll tell you whether or not it's a drive up, one thing, and it'll also tell you kind of where people park and just kind of a little bit about different approaches, right?
And it's nice because you can download the tracks and put it right in your GPS, which is really fantastic.
If you hover over the track description there, some activators will write a little comment box that you have to hover over where it says Pole Knoll, right next to this call sign K5AKL. You just hover the mouse over that. So you see now there's notes.
Notes.
Yeah. So there's a different way, not easier. There's a different way that's less robust, but kind of more user-friendly maybe on the SOTLess website. Can you bring that one up, Dan? Just the map of just the overall map of SOTLess. Yeah, see, so you could zoom in this way too, right?
Yeah.
And then you would just click on a peak and you just kind of go through the same thing. You access the tracks and the information. Okay, so what does somebody need? Okay, so Andy Goss wants to know, how can you tell or determine if roads that you've chosen are actually open, roads to a summit? So have any of you had any experiences where you've like, oh, that's going to be a drive up, and you get halfway to the top and then there's a gate or there's a washout, or how do you know, other than obviously a good thing to do is to check the notes and see about access in the notes if there are any exist. What else do you guys do?
Well, there's a Forest Service website, since we all go up to Flagstaff, you can go to the National Forest website and they'll show you, they have a list of road closures in there. Unfortunately, it's not always accurate, but that's one resource. Because like we just had that snowstorm, right? Everything got locked down pretty much. But so that's one spot you can find what's currently open or closed, although it's not always 100%.
Or you can also call the Forest Service area for where you're planning on hiking. And again, just like Pete said, sometimes they're not always accurate either.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Even when you talk to them, they don't know something.
Yeah.
One of the things that I like to do at least in the planning stage, and it's not so much related to like the seasonal road closures or weather road closures, Google Earth and the topo map. A lot of times the Forest Service topo maps will depict a gate. It just looks like a bar with two dots on either end, and it'll show you that there's a gate on the road. Doesn't always mean it's open, doesn't always mean it's closed. The other thing is just using Google Earth. You look for where the gate's supposed to be, because a lot of times you can overlay the two maps together and bounce back and forth. And I'll put a point on the topo map, and then I'll overlay the Google Earth map on it to where that gate's supposed to be. And sometimes you can zoom in and pretty clearly see from the satellite photo if there's a closed gate there or not.
Right, you can see those gates sometimes. You just don't know for sure if they're closed.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
And I like the SOTA last page a little better now. I've been using that a lot more because it's just everything is just in one pane. Like I'm looking at Spitz Hill, and I get, several resources for people who have done it. And also I get, information as far as, what the person, how the person got there, or any kind of notes. And then I get multiple GPX tracks all in one pane. I don't have to go to multiple panes like I do on the SOTA Watch site. So I tend to use this more now than I've used the other for mapping stuff.
One thing to add is if you think it's going to be a drive up, but there's forest roads involved, be sure you have your pack and that you are prepared to hike. Because if you get close enough to where, okay, it's not a drive up today, but it's only a 2 mile or 3 mile hike, you can put your pack on and just go ahead and do it that way. But if you plan, if everything's in a crate, because it's a drive up, then you're not going to be able to finish your activation.
My experience has been that there's almost no drive ups in Arizona. I could probably count on two hands the number of times, and some of those will be duplicates. There's just almost no summits that you can actually drive to the top that I'm aware of.
Yeah, most of them are, a forest gate, like a mile to 3 miles away, and you just park there and you hoof it up the rest of the way.
All right, guys. So if let me give one more chance for somebody who hasn't said anything, and then we'll move on to the next piece. We only have maybe 10 minutes left. All right, sounds like we're good. Okay, so I kind of know now how to choose a peak, and I know that I have to be. We've talked about that you have to be in the activation zone when you activate it, and we've talked about the gear. We haven't really talked about deployment. We'll have to save that for another time, but we're operating on top. How important is it to log what you what you're doing? I mean, can I just go up there?
And if you don't log it, you don't get your points.
Oh, okay.
No log, no points.
Okay, so if I log on paper, then I have to probably do something, right? Or even if I log on the phone, what's the I guess this is kind of the final step. So we talked about gear, we geared up, we went out there safely, we reached the top because we chose the right peak, and we know it has points, a point value system. So we get on top, we activate, we log. Now, are we done? No. What's the last piece that we got to do in order to claim those points and to get going on Summits on the Air?
Download CSV logger and input your file into your data into that and submit it to the website, obviously.
Okay.
So the CSV editor, to me, is really an easy way to do it.
Yeah.
And maybe on your first activation, you may just put an online by hand, just using the input, and then use CSV logger.
Can you show that, Dan?
Yep. So let's see. Submit activator entry. Oop. Yeah.
So right there, manual, right?
One at a time.
So you just come in and enter your.
Great question, Lynn and Lee. So if I only get one contact, do I get and I enter it into the database here? Am I good?
You'll get credit for the activation, but you won't get any points.
Why
you have
not?
to have four. You have to have 4 contacts for the points, but only 1 contact to get credit for activating the summit.
Okay. So I could just go ahead and activate just 4 contacts, and then I'm done. I can leave the summit, and I can do that for every summit then.
Well, you're the one putting the log in, but you will probably want to put in all the contacts because people like to know that they got in the log.
No, what I'm saying is I can hike to the top, make 4 contacts, and then go back down to my car and be done, and then do that for every summit.
If that's what you choose to do, sure.
Okay.
But it's not really courteous to the rest of the people that were waiting there to try to work you, because if you throw the alert up, chances are there's a number of people that want to work that summit. They're waiting at home for you to get on, and if you just flip the switch after 4 contacts, it's bad form, bad etiquette. Try to work as many as you can. Obviously, weather, travel conditions, it took you a lot longer to get up on the summit. You're worried about getting down before the dark. You gotta put your own safety and time constraints and capabilities first, but try to work as many people as you can before you bail off.
One thing we haven't
Yeah.
talked at all about is putting alerts on SOTA Watch and then spotting. Because especially if you're operating QRP, it's good to have people looking for you and then knowing what frequency you're on and what time you're actually on the mountain.
And try and post a spot, at least 2 or 3 days ahead of time if you can. So, people that don't peruse the site every single day are more likely to see your alert.
Yeah, if you do it too late, like the night before, a lot of times I miss them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I learned that the second peak I tried to activate, I only got one contact because I knew about spotting, but I didn't have cell coverage, but I didn't know about alerting. And alerting is when you put in your plan that you're going to go to a summit. And then if you're on CW and RBN picks you up, then it automatically spots you. So that was a lesson I learned. I climbed to the peak and I didn't get any points because I wasn't able to spot myself.
A nice thing, and so they really improved the ability when you're adding an alert. So you can type in mountain names and stuff like that, for example, and it'll automatically fill it in, which is really nice. So ETA is in UTC time, and then it picks up after you do your first one. It picks up a lot of the stuff that you constantly enter.
Okay, Scout 75 wants to know, hey, so are chaser logs like completely separate? Is there some type of validation? Meaning, if I only make 2 contacts up at the top, then does the chaser get screwed out of the points?
No. The chaser, it's not like Logbook of the World where it's looking for the confirmation and it doesn't log it as a valid contact. One of the things about SOTA is it's strictly the whole program really is strictly based on your own integrity. If you're in the log, you're in the log. If you activated the summit, you activated the summit. No one's going back and double checking what you're doing. I mean, sometimes some things, you scratch your head. Like for us, you see somebody that says they activated Sunset Crater. We all know that's not possible. Legally, at least, it's not possible. So those are the ones that you sit there and you'll scratch your head. Well, how did that happen? But as far as the logs are concerned, it's based on your own integrity and the honor system.
And also,
the SOTA management team, the SOTA management team, by the way, they don't do log checking, but if they hear rumors about somebody's like maybe fabricating contacts, they actually do watch stuff, and they have actually banned people from SOTA for doing stuff like that, for creating contacts that didn't exist and doing activations where nobody else worked them. They just kind of look at it and see. They'll look at it and go, well, was he really on the peak? Did a couple people confirm it? Okay, yeah, he got 2. Okay, he was really there. So they do some watching, because I've seen them actually ban people from SOTA.
Dan, can you unshare your screen, please?
Yeah.
One thing I would add is that if you're on a summit and you make a contact, for it to count, that person does not have to log it. That person doesn't even have to be a chaser. It's just if you make 4 contacts, you can't use repeater contacts, but as long as it's simplex. So like if you go on the mountain and your spot didn't take, or you didn't post an alert, and you just get on to like the calling, if you're doing 2 meters, the calling frequency or something, and just say, hey, anybody out there? Like one time I was in Georgia and I just had my HT with me, and I hadn't posted a spot. I was just with my wife, and so I just went out and just started calling on the calling frequency and saying, hey, anybody, I'm a guy, I'm on a summit, I'm doing the SOTA thing, and I just need at least 4 people. Anybody could just check in with me. And that works too.
Okay, guys, it's already 10:30, so we're going to have to probably wrap it up here. Steve, the GOAT, might pop in and say hi here while we're wrapping it up. But there was one thing. Scout 75, I get your question now. So, he was trying to say he was worried about him not getting his points if the chasers didn't put their logs in, and that's not the case either. If you, like Brian said, if nobody logs, puts in the log, and none of the chasers log their activation, and you log it, you get the points if you have the 4.
And let me just add one quick thing on that. I know we're running out of time, but as a chaser, I run a paper log, which I then bulk log into SOTA Watch later. And so like if as an activator, if I'm at home and you work me, I'm the chaser, I may not have logged you for 2 to 3 weeks later. So, and I think a lot of chasers do that. Not everybody instantaneously logs their contact. So, you know, if you're an activator and you see a bunch of people that haven't logged you, they just haven't necessarily logged you yet.
Yeah. One of the features that's just a quickie on the logging, if you have the SOTA Watch 3 page up on your computer at home, you can actually log directly from SOTA Watch 3 now, which makes it a lot easier. There's on the icon right next to the, there's an icon right next to the summit designation on the spot. If you click that, it'll automatically bring up the frequency, everything you need to do to dump it in there. And I believe it also goes with the time too. Just click log it and it's done. And then you can log it in your own personal log, you know, whenever you want to or however you want to do it. But if you're out running around, you can do it even on your phone. I've done it from the car with VHF contacts while being mobile.
Yeah, that's a great feature, because that's where I look for activators, and it just goes in right away and don't have to worry about missing the log.
Yeah,
yeah, one of the best features on the page.
So we have Steve W7A who just hopped in to say hi real quick. How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing great. I'm trying to figure out. I've got another window open here that's playing audio, and so it.
Oh, might be you're looking at the live stream maybe too.
Yeah, that's what I was probably doing.
Yeah, that can make it hard.
Anyway, we've got really high winds here right now today, and
yeah, it's blowing away part of your arm and stuff.
Or I'd be up on the mountain today, but looks like a lot of good info, and I know you're running on short on time, so I'll just say hi, and good program.
Okay, thanks, Steve. So what we're gonna do, and you can stick around for this, Steve. We're gonna go round robin here real quick, and we're gonna say give a new SOTA guy one piece of advice. And what would that be? If you were to give the SOTA guy one piece of advice, a new guy who hasn't been on a summit before, what would it be? We'll go around and ask everybody to just come up with something. We'll come to you last, Steve. And then another thing, just before we wrap up, I wanted to say we have so much that we haven't covered yet. We're probably going to have to do another episode of this, so we'll come back to this, and we won't cover the hiking and all that other stuff, but there's still some other stuff we need to talk about. So let me start here down at the bottom with Dan first and see what his one piece of advice for a SOTA guy is.
Which Dan?
I'm sorry, Dan AI6XG.
Okay, I get the first one. Great. I think for a new SOTA person or first activation is remember the chasers want the points. So you really are the one that's in command. So if you're new to CW, don't worry about sending really slow. They'll come back slow. If it's sideband exchange, they'll work with you through it. So just remember the chasers are there for you, and you're in the lead.
Cool. How about Adam?
All right, I would say one of the key tips would be to look up another local activator, someone that's active in the area, get a hold of them, send them an email, and see if you can do a joint activation. You can learn a ton by getting out with someone that's been doing SOTA for a while.
Yeah, well said. All right, Brian?
I'd say, yeah, don't be afraid to go out and do it. Just do it. It's have the plan, look at the stuff we all discussed. If there's somebody local, like everybody else has said, or even if there isn't anybody local, most everybody that activates is more than willing to lend a hand. I do, presentations a lot, and I get questions from people all over the country. Don't be afraid to ask somebody. Just pick somebody.
Okay.
Get the information and then just go do it.
Okay, Keith.
Yeah, I would say just especially if it's a newbie, right? Grab your handy cocky, take a walk up on the hill. I think you'll have fun.
Keith.
I'm going to just say, the mountains aren't going anywhere. You got lots and lots of time. I'm close to 5 years into it, and I'm constantly learning new things. I learned new things from some of you guys today. So don't feel like you got to do it all at once. You don't have to be perfect at it before you do it. Just go do it.
Dan?
I'd say also, go with somebody. Even if you don't have any HF gear and you only have an HT or you don't have any radio gear, the most important thing is to get out there and enjoy it. I think everybody that's on this forum would be more than happy to take anybody with them on a SOTA activation, and just get out there and enjoy the hike and enjoy the view from the top. It's very unique and it's a lot of fun.
Dave?
I would just let everybody know that the SOTA community, the SOTA group, are really the friendliest group of amateur operators that I've been a part of. Very patient, and so you just relax. I guess that's the thing, is relax when you're on the summit, and don't be afraid to make a mistake, because we don't care. It's we're there to have fun, and you should be too.
All right, Steve, you're up with parting words of wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely go with somebody. And maybe if you don't operate, who cares? Being able to watch what goes on and see another operator, and also hear all these chasers coming back. And you're probably thinking, oh my God, how can I control that? But it's important, I think, to kind of dip your toe in the water. But it's also really fun as an activator to bring a newbie and teach them how to fish. And whether it's, casting a fly line or doing the screwing an ugly worm on the hook, and throwing it out there and watching a big bass come up and take it. It's the same in ham radio. I mean, you can get all wrapped around the technique and the complexity of the equipment, or you can just do it. And I'd recommend just doing it in terms of the ham radio aspect of it, and doing it with a friend, another experienced ham who's done SOTA a lot.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with everything that's been said, and that's kind of been my mantra a lot too. Is go with somebody and see, and you can gain experience and knowledge that way. And then, of course, like you said, also, Steve, is I really love taking people out and showing them how to do it. Right? It's teaching them how to fish. I think a lot of us enjoy it. Right? Yeah. All right. Well, it's been a good hour and a half. Like I said, we've got so much more to cover in no time. We'll do this again, maybe in a month. We'll invite you all back, and we'll in next month, between now and next month, why don't you guys think about maybe some things that we haven't talked about that are important, and bring that to the table, and we'll talk about that next time. And we'll bring Steve in too if he's available. And so, all right, guys, let's enjoy the rest of the Sunday. And hey, it's Super Bowl Sunday. If you're into football, enjoy that. If not, then enjoy whatever else you got going on. Thank you so much to everybody who was in chat. It was great. Got your questions. Hopefully, most of them answered. Some we may not have because we were kind of short on time. But thanks everybody for being there, and we will talk to you all on the next one. Say bye, everybody.
73.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
73.